Greetings, ladies and gentlefish, and welcome to something a little different. This is an opportunity, I'll be honest, for me to have, rant is the wrong word, share some thoughts with you. You may or may not find them interesting. If you do, by all means, please feel free to write your own thoughts, comments, or whatnot in the description down below. Yeah, essentially, well, we'll get on to exactly what it is I have thoughts on in just a moment. But it does occur to me that in a world in which we have the internet, a lot of people, we have the entire repository, essentially, of human knowledge at our fingertips, which is great. But this is humanity we're talking about, and what you tend to find is that that knowledge often falls into categories that I'm sure people living 300 years ago would never have expected. You know, we have everything on the internet, right the way from adorable pictures of kittens to rampant pornography. We have got questions and conversations about the very existence of the universe and about the meaning of life itself, and then at the other end of the spectrum we have some conspiracy theories about goodness only knows what these days. But it does occur to me that with all this floating around, it can be very difficult to get a feeling for what's real, I guess, anymore. So, yeah, I don't know, this is just my thoughts on some wee little aspects of that. You don't have to agree, of course, but, you might find it vaguely interesting. Before I really kick off with this properly, I think it's always worth laying your own cards on the table. Saying who you are. We all come at things with our own biases, our own perspectives, and I think it's only reasonable and honest to make those apparent right from the off. So, for anybody who does not already know, I am white. Oh no, this is a startling revelation for some, I am sure. I'm vaguely middle class. Or these days anyway. My parents, when I was brought up, I don't have a sob story, by the way, for my upbringing. It was all pretty standard. My parents were a little on the poorer side, but nothing that really affected my childhood in any meaningful way. So, I mean, all things considered, I've had a pretty good roll of the dice. I am what you would consider a straight individual. I am male. I mean, all these little things that some people consider relevant. I'm in my 20s. I am personally not religious, but I take the perspective that, hey, you do whatever you want, and as long as people don't throw their religion down my throats, I see no reason why I should throw my lack of religion back at them. I'm a much more live and let live kind of person. Politically, vaguely somewhere, sort of not left wing, not right wing, sort of in the middle, but definitely towards the liberal side of things. And I am a fairly well educated chap. I have a PGCE, postgraduate certificate in education, for anyone who doesn't know. I have a master's degree in physics. I have a PhD in space physics. I mean, I'm a fairly well, as I say, educated individual. Now this of course does mean I will come with my own biases, which is why I'm trying to point these things out, and it does of course mean with that sort of upbringing I am going to quite like empirical evidence, and not really like airy-fairy lack of empirical evidence really, but you know, I'm just laying my cards on the table, that's all I'm getting at. So, to the issue in hand. The music's changed. A few days ago, that's very well timed, a few days ago, we had some Jehovah's Witnesses knock on our door. And they came round and they delivered a couple of booklets. And this is a sort of picture of one of them. It's not the best picture in the world, but you get the general idea. The Origin of Life, 5 questions worth asking. And essentially, it was framing many of the ideas and the beliefs held by the Jehovah's Witnesses in a decidedly sort of scientific way, or at least that was the attempt. And it included the immortal words, but evolution's just a theory. Which is a very good way to get my go. Now, I was going to go off on a tirade and a rant about how they clearly don't understand the definition of the word theory and the way it is used in different contexts. But I thought, the thing with that is that you end up getting down this stupid little rabbit hole that never ends up going anywhere. You know, the typical conversation, well, you may or may not know, but a conversation along the lines of, well, it's only a theory, therefore why do I need to pay attention? To which the response is, well, gravity's only a theory, are you prepared to jump off a 20-story building and test it? Now, that's not a particularly helpful response. That doesn't really further the conversation in any way, shape or form. It's just pretty damn useless. So I don't really think that's a useful way of thinking about things. So let's try again. And I think a lot of the problem here is going to come down to language. So the English language is an interesting beast. It is one of the languages in the world that is the most widely spoken by, well, arguably the most people, or close to the most people globally. It's spoken in a lot of contexts by lots and lots of people, and it is a language that is continually expanding. Which means that its linguistics are a bit weird. You have examples where you have, let's say, some words that sound the same if you are to hear them. I've got the example here of 2, 2 and 2. They sound the same, but they're spelt differently and they have different meanings. 2 could refer to the number, 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. You could be referring to a qualifier, oh my god, it is too hot today. Or you could be using it for pretty much anything else. In this case, the alien is travelling to Earth to incinerate us or whatever. So, it sounds the same, but 3 different meanings and 3 different spellings. Alternatively, you have a word that might have the same spelling, but it's a different word with a different meaning. So on a clock, you might be talking about, well, a minute of time, spelt M-I-N-U-T-E, but you may also refer to something as being minute. It's the same spelling, but it sounds different and it has a different meaning. It means something is very, very, very small. And so that's a bit confusing. And then, of course, you come up with conventions about how you can modify words to change their meaning, but you don't apply it the same in every situation, and end up with this stupid situation where appropriate and inappropriate mean the opposite of each other, but an object that is flammable could also be described as inflammable, and that would be fine. So this is a bit weird and a bit confusing, and ultimately, when you have a language that is spoken by such a wide variety of different people, it's perhaps not a huge surprise that it has a lot of different words drawn from a lot of different places with a lot of different roots, with different meanings. I mean, on the one end of the spectrum, you have words derived from their Latin roots. The UK, of course, was, or England and Wales, I should say, was invaded by the Roman Empire, and they tended to bring Latin with them. But you also have Saxon influences, you have Celtic influences, you have European influences, the word pyjamas is taken from Punjabi. I mean, there's influences all over the place, so perhaps this shouldn't come as a surprise, but it does mean that English is a bit of an inconsistent pain in the backside as far as a language goes. So, this brings us back to the idea of a theory, and why I am bothering to rant about this in the first place, or comment on it. Let's not go with rant, comment on it. So what is a theory? So let's rewind a little bit. Let's imagine you don't know what the word means, and you just go and you look it up. So you might use a dictionary, or, I mean, it's 2018, you probably just use the internet, let's be honest. So, let's use the internet. And if we do so, we might come across this. This is just me searching for a definition for the word. This is from oxforddictionaries.com. I mean, it's the first hit you get on Google, or it was when I did this. And already you can see the problem in that you're coming up with multiple definitions, so this is going to be messy to start off with. But let's have a look at these multiple definitions. So number 1, what is a theory? It is a noun, okay, fine. A supposition or a system of ideas intended to explain something, especially one based on general principles independent of the thing to be explained. I'll be honest, that's not really a very helpful definition, and it gives Darwin's theory of evolution as an example here, but it's not the sort of definition that people are really going to find, most people I think are really going to find satisfactory. Okay, so a set of principles on which the practice of an activity is based. A theory of education, or music theory is the example. Okay, fine. An idea used to account for a situation or justify a course of action. My theory would be that the place has been seriously mismanaged. Okay. And then there's a specifically mathematical definition, a collection of propositions to illustrate the principles of a subject. And there's even a little example. Okay, so, it's phrases, in theory, used in describing what is supposed to happen or be possible, usually with the implication that it does not, in fact, happen. So nowhere in all this is the word evidence used. And the implication is very much across these that a theory is an idea, often without much behind it. And that's pretty much how we use the word in everyday speech. If I'm talking to you and I say, well, in theory, blah-de-blah-de-blah-de-blah-de-blah, I'm kind of saying that's an idea that I have, but I haven't really put it into practice, or I haven't really got any evidence to support it. And that's fine. The problem is that scientists don't really use any of those definitions, really. So if you do another Google search for a scientific definition of the word theory, then, I'm just going to show you an extract taken straight from Wikipedia. So a scientific theory is an explanation of an aspect of the natural world that can be repeatedly tested and verified in accordance with the scientific method using accepted protocols of observation, measurement, and evaluation of results. Where possible, theories are tested under controlled conditions in an experiment. In circumstances not amenable to experimental testing, theories are evaluated through principles of abductive reasoning. Established scientific theories have withstood rigorous scrutiny and embody scientific knowledge. And that last phrase, sentence, is kind of the key point here. Really. We essentially have two competing definitions for the word theory. We have either an idea with little or no evidence to back it up versus an idea that has been rigorously tested and has a large-ish body of evidence to support it. These two definitions are fairly dissimilar. The top definition, the first one, is kind of how you would use the word in everyday speech, in everyday parlance, and the second definition is how the word would typically be used in a scientific context. So, if we were referring to the theory of evolution or the theory of gravity, we would be referring to an idea that has been tested a lot and has a bunch of evidence to back it up. So it's about as close, in science anyway, it's about as close as you can get to fact. So all these ideas about, all these comments about, well, it's only a theory, they're fundamentally misunderstanding how the word is being used. Well, that seems pretty clean cut, so it just comes down to definitions, right? Yeah. Yes. Well, yeah. So I get irritated, because a lot of people who are scientifically minded still misuse the word. And this is where I'm looking at if we're talking about publicity, I'm looking at channels like Game Theory, YouTube channel, with the wonderful catchphrase, but that's just a theory. Game theory, film theory, whatever. So again, the implication being very much it's just an idea, a hypothesis. They are speculating and they don't really have much substantial evidence to back it up. Which I dislike. It spreads this not really very accurate notion about how the word is used in a scientific context, but it's very difficult to be too critical when even the scientific community can't really properly agree on what the word means. I mean, I know what it should mean, I've described that, explained that, but, well, scientists are not some collective body, group mind with a particular way of thinking. I mean, they're all individuals at the end of the day, and so we get daft exceptions, like, for example, theoretical physics. Well, that's a branch of physics that is very definitely not focused on direct experimentation. It is focused on the ideas, the mathematics behind the science. Okay, and then we have things like string theory, which is a high-flung idea, but at least at the time of recording this, to the best of my knowledge, has yet to actually make an empirically testable prediction, which, by my opinion, would kind of prevent it from being a theory, yet it still has the moniker theory. So it's difficult to be too critical when even scientists don't properly agree. So, what is the upshot of all this? Well, if you have someone talking to you in everyday speech, and they say, well, that's a theory, I have a theory, then they are probably, it's fairly safe to assume, meaning an idea that they haven't tested, really. If, on the other hand, you are talking in the context of science, it's usually reasonably safe to assume that the idea has indeed been tested quite a lot in order to get the description or the title a theory. That's what a theory is. And if in doubt, look it up. I mean, again, the internet has essentially the entirety of human knowledge, and it's at most of our fingertips. So use it. I mean, to watch this video, you have access to the internet, so just go and look things up. Do be a little bit careful. The internet is a bit of a quagmire of misinformation, half-truths, cat videos, and other things that can be easily distracting, but ultimately the only way you're ever going to work out what's real and what's not is to go and try. So go and do so. And I would say always keep a skeptical mind whenever you're told anything. Go and look it up. Go and find out for yourself. Go and see what you think. And ultimately I think that's probably the best takeaway message I could have for anyone from this video, and that's pretty much me done. Thank you to those of you who decided to listen to me ramble on for a while. If you have any comments or anything, please feel free to whack them down in the comments. But do bear in mind that, you know, different people have some different opinions, and whilst there are some things in life that we can be pretty sure on, there are also a lot that we can't, and just because someone disagrees with you doesn't make them the reincarnation of Lucifer or anything like that, so just run with it. Anyway, that is all I had to say, so with that I shall bid you all adieu. I hope you're having a lovely evening, and I will catch you in another video. Ciao, ciao.